Yo, 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 what's up, everybody? Thank you for tuning in to yet again another fantastic indie creator interview. It is your Capes Crusader, Cody, and we are keeping it geekly with our good friend Ob of Diamant Comics. Thank you so much for coming on. I need to give you the biggest shout out in the world because you have been probably, I would say, without a doubt, the biggest Twitter supporter I've had seen recently in the last couple weeks. Holy crap, every time I wake up, I have a couple missed notifications from you liking and retweeting, and holy crap, I appreciate you so much. Thank you. Support like that is like what keeps this boat floating, Thank you.
Yeah. I'm happy to help. I'm really big into supporting people, and I get up at insane 2 o'clock in the morning now, and first thing I do is open Twitter and start going.
Oh, man. Yeah. So we were talking a little bit earlier, but I mean, we got to make it official now that we're live on camera. What was, what was your first steps into creating comics? I know we're here to talk about American Prince, but let's talk about the things that happened before American Prince.
Sure. So back in the early 2000s, giving away my age, me and my twin had met a fairly well-known comic book artist, and he did take us under his wing and train us to draw comics, and that led to us working on getting like a deal together with him. And so there's a few comics out there that are worth a little bit of money that have our original names in there, are back in the 2000s, stuff. I don't know if I should mention.
No, you. So this is 100%. Feel free to use this platform however you want to. If you want to talk about that, feel free to. But if you're not comfortable, then by all means,
No, I mean, it's kind of just like trivia stuff, because we don't mind people finding the old stuff because it was part of our history. But since it went bad, I never want to mention the guy's name. So, yeah, and that would lead it to his name. But yeah, we got a comic book deal with a well-known company that actually is also on Global Comics that I won't mention, but it's not their fault. We got this great deal, and we were going to make it. We were going to be writers. He was going to draw it. He just never did it. And then he breached the contract. So once I found out the contract was dead, and our lawyer was like, yeah, sorry.
What did he do to breach it?
He just never drew the comic. And
wow.
Yeah, he kept, all they needed was 5 pages. They were like, 5 pages. The world is yours, And they had all this stuff lined up for us, and he kept not drawing it. And finally he missed the deadline, and they were like, sorry guys. And but in the contract built in there, they kept the idea they could replace us with a new team, everything. They never did, which I'm glad, because I think that would have hurt a lot more. But we decided at that point that no one was ever going to get our intellectual property again on that.
Holy
so that,
crap.
Yeah, that idea had to be shelved. But in the meantime, we had started to create the stuff that was the basis of American Prince. And it kind of actually started as a bet between me, my twin brother, and our little sister, who could write these new vampire stories. And so we started doing that, and I burned my portfolio. I actually threw my whole art portfolio in a wood stove and said, no more comics, and gave up. And
oh my God.
Yeah. And so that was what it was like for a little while. In 2012, we started publishing the novels. We got a really good small little following with that. A lot of people love the novels. And my German friends, Alex and Bina, were like, can you start drawing for us? And we were like, no, we really don't do that. And the next thing we know, we're like, yeah, sure, let's do it. So we illustrated some charity projects for them. I did children's books. Mm-hmm. And then slowly they were like, comics. And then that's when I got with Justin. And he was like, you got to get back into comics again. So we started, we sort of shifted away from the novels, started doing the comics. At first just adapting comics for indie authors. So there's some stuff out there. Then we started doing a Halloween anthology. Mm-hmm. And the Halloween anthology actually was doing very well. And I started to bring in the guys from American Prince that would become American Prince into the Halloween stuff.
Okay, I like that. Real quick, we have J. Michael Miller over on YouTube, stopping in, saying all the support. I think that was in reference to earlier when we were talking about me thanking you for all the support you were showing us. And then also saying that's horrible in reference to what happened to the comic originally. Yeah. J. Michael Miller, welcome to the stream. How are you doing tonight, man? So go on. Don't let me interrupt too much. Yeah, I mean, how was it doing a novel and then working on a comic? Was that a big change for you?
It was, but there's always, so when I write, I see a movie in my head. So I'm writing art, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
I'm writing art, and then I was like, wait a minute, if I can see the stuff in my head, I can draw the stuff in my head. And so slowly I started to do that. I did traditional at first, and then started with the digital, which took 2 years for me to relearn how to draw. And so that's why like the first stuff is kind of rough, because I've literally been boot camp. I've been in like a boot camp with myself for since 2016, learning how to redraw, and each time I get better. Yeah, I just started to go, okay, now I can see these. I can see them, and I can put them down on paper and share them. And it's a lot easier than writing like a 700-page book.
Yeah. So you said you were in a race with your brother and your sister to create who can create a vampire comic.
A new
first.
Vampire. Yeah.
So where are they at with their side of the race?
So my sister actually is doing very well with the indie art in Indianapolis. So she's become like she paints. She does paintings and art shows and things like that. I really would love for her to get into comics, because you guys would see like totally like we come from the same root, I guess. We all got our art talent from our mom, and we all hold up our art together and we go, oh, we all do the same thing. Like we have the same thing, although our influences are completely different. Jordan's his side of it actually became more of the novels, and then I merged my stuff into the novels. And so his characters are actually going to slowly start to integrate into American Prince, merging all of our stuff together, while he works on Happy Go Gothy and Melting Pot Riot. And I always ask him, I'm like, do you want to work more on this? Are you happy with what you're doing? You know? And he's like, no, I'm happy. I'm working on this other stuff. And he also has another a graphic novel coming out with Freaktown Comics.
That's
so
awesome. Busy. So
yeah,
give us a little bit of a breakdown what American Prince is about. Like, what type of story are we going to see when we start to dive into this?
So I kind of built it up. The first stuff that you think that you're learning about is kind of a fluffy love story. Boy meets ghoul. So, this guy meets a vampire, and they're gonna fall in love and everything will be fine. And then I start ratcheting up the crazy, a little bit of the darkness. I say the body count starts, because it really is. It's a vampire comic that is definitely going to talk about losing your humanity, what it means to become a vampire, what it means to try to hold on to being a human, in the back of your mind, or like, do you become a monster, or do you stay human even though you're a vampire sort of. It's going to deal with a lot of heavy issues. Just like I'm just sort of sneaking in like a lot of things that you don't normally see in vampire fiction, but that I feel could really be addressed. Different sorts of stuff. You got the gangster stuff, but you also have stuff that I'm going to be talking about: religious abuse, teen pregnancy. Things that, like, I grew up in Indiana with all this stuff happening around me, and so that was sort of like the basis of
Indiana.
It all
was like, probably rough too, I would imagine. It was definitely I'm from Ohio, so I'm kind of in a similar like demographic area. How was it growing up in a place like that? It was probably like, did it have a lot of impact on like your writing and kind of like how you view things?
Yeah, so where our family did move around a lot. So I lived a little bit in Texas. I lived in Colorado. Most of the time, though, we always ended up running back home to Indiana and living in Indiana. And this is the longest I've actually stayed out. Yeah, I'm in Arizona, and it's the longest I've ever stayed away from Indiana. So it was always home base, but it's one of those things too where it's like I don't want to go back home, and I know my mom is out there, and I want her to come here. It's hard to go back home, and because I grew up. That whole sort of family was very religious. I grew up with a lot of that religious. Having to go to church camp, having to go to church, having to do all this stuff, and it's that certain evangelicalness that and that just sort of shaped me when it came to like I never like rebelled or anything, but I sort of like really like I have to get out of here. I have to think bigger. And I felt the longer I stayed in that little town in Indiana, the more closed off I was getting. And you don't travel anymore. You don't do anything.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, there's big cities in Indiana. My family lives in a big city now, but we lived in that little where everybody knows each other and, and that sort of thing. And I just...
It can kind of be hard to be who you want to be in those areas, to truly be who you are. Yeah. Like a lot of the times you got to hide stuff and repress stuff. And
exactly,
it kind of, I kind of felt like, reading through this, the first chapter it felt like two protagonists. You have the main protagonist. Is it Raul?
It's Raleigh.
Raleigh.
Okay,
I was close.
Like
I was
Carolina.
Close. So you have Raleigh, and then you have the bellboy, the new driver. It really felt like with Raleigh, excuse me. He was kind of hiding who he wanted to be. He was very adventurous, for quote unquote lack of better words. When you said body count, I was like, okay, which way are we looking at here? But it looks like a lot of people in his life didn't really accept that part of him either. So it kind of gave me the vibe that he was holding a lot of who he wanted to be within himself too.
Yeah, and he definitely is. He's that part of Indiana, so. He's the first character I've ever given that has we both share a sort of background. So he's definitely a Hoosier that ran away. Only in his case, he went to Las Vegas, and I went to Phoenix. But we're going to be who we're going to be, and so he's a little bit closer to who I am. That sort of down home. That's why he keeps getting called farm boy, even though he's not really a farm boy, because everybody's picking up on the Hoosierness, that good-natured, sort of Indiana guy. But he wants to be this big bag, fancy guy in Vegas. So it's a little bit like the Killer's song, "The Man." He wants to be the man.
So we really don't get to see a whole lot of the vampire aspect in chapter 1 either. It's just it felt like the very last page, there was 2 bites on the neck. It felt like the only little, real taste of the vampirism in this. Why'd you start so slow with that?
Because the world of American Prince is so that the vampires are not they're kind of not special. They're literally anybody that's walking down the street. There's a little bit of a separation because there's a hierarchy, but it's set up so that, your neighbor might be a vampire. And we're going to explore that more, sort of thing.
I love how they're running the casino in chapter 2.
And Raleigh doesn't even realize that. He's like, wait a minute. Oh, there's vampires. And she's like, suddenly forgot her name. My own character, and I forget. It fell out of my head.
It happens more often than people would realize on
here. She's like, there's vampires everywhere, meaning you're talking to one, So it's really that sort of setup that the line is not so dramatic. I didn't want a world where everybody's running around going, oh my goodness, there's vampires, and I didn't realize it. They're all around you. They're just at certain degrees of vampire. There you got your creepy ghoul, you got your Vampire Lestat, you got all that stuff. It's a world with tons and tons of vampires mixing around. It just happens to be that, this guy's actually a vampire. But even he's different from the other vampires that he associates with, which is going to be explored a lot more as we get into Mally's backstory.
Okay.
like what drove him to become this vampire.
Another big part of this too is representation. You know, representation is oozing out of like every part of this. You know, what are you doing to make sure that it's done correctly?
I basically was really involved in the community, and the hotel that I worked for was back when I first started the gay hotel. So working overnight, I would learn so much. I would talk to people, hear things, and know a lot of drag queens, a lot of trans women that had to come through who were working. You would see their tears. You would just sit and talk to them all night. And so I started learning more and more about more people and about the trans community and about the gay community. And I read a lot of literature. I know a lot of the elders. And I just sort of like absorbed all their stuff to just sort of make sure what I was doing was going to be beneficial and not like a stereotype. So a lot of it is based on just absorbing all these people's stories and talking to people. The same with like my friends who are over in England or in Europe. I absorb a lot of the stuff that they do when they talk and they say, and that helps me with their representation when I have European people or the British folk in there and stuff.
So talking about representation and it be done correctly, what are some of the issues that you see with representation within comics that's done maybe incorrectly, like where it's not really hitting the mark?
I think everybody tries. I think though that they sort of there's a reason why, I don't know, Malachi's sibling Simon, their pronouns are they. You look at Simon and say, oh, well, that's clearly like a middle-aged English man. But Simon is now non-binary after their long struggle with. But I decided that because I knew a lot of people who they can't do the hormones, they can't always dress the way they want to. I wanted to represent that through Simon, that you don't, and I feel like people either think when you're trans, you go all the way, all the surgeries and all the hormones. But there's a whole lot of people that can't do that, and they're not represented.
I love that.
Only people that get represented a lot of times in the media are the people that you go, oh, they were a man, and you're like, but they look like this perfect woman, and it's just not available to every trans person. And so, and same with Jordan's Melting Pot Riot. He's really pushing he used a lot of our friends and family in the beginning with the Pride Festival in his comic. So we wanted to show that there's a whole spectrum, and I'm sure people watching this are trans and they think that they have to blend in or pass. It's your journey, and that's what I want to represent in there, being, representation. Raleigh is bisexual. He's going to stay bisexual. And he can, and so I'm trying to make sure that there's a lot of good stuff and that everybody sees that everything's fluid and you don't have to be extremes or, everybody can be who they are. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
I love that too. I love how you're touching base on a big part of that's not really in the spotlight. You really don't hear about people who are transitioning and not able to get the medications, or maybe they're not able to take it, or whatever, maybe they're stuck in a cornfield town and the people are going to harass them for it.
Yes.
I love how you're touching base on that, and I think it is really, really important to do so. How many chapters are you at with American Prince right now?
I'm on number 6, and there's going to be a lot of stuff to cover, so it's going to go on for quite some time. But yeah, I'm on number 6, going towards number 7.
Number 7, and then so do you have an idea, in your mind, how many chapters you want to try to hit?
Not really, because I write on instinct, so my gut will tell me how long or how short an episode is, if that makes sense. I have guidelines, and then I have a mental guideline, and I have all these beats I know I have to hit, and occasionally my imagination will be like, throw this in, and then I'm like, okay, I gotta work that in, and so
so what's that creative process look like for you though, when you're getting ready to script and draw, because you're not only the writer but also the artist for this?
Yeah, I write like just like a paragraph of what I'm wanting, what beats to hit. Then I start like doing my thumbnails, loose paneling, and I see the visuals in my head. I'm like, okay, so a lot of I grew up reading comics that were in foreign languages so that I could understand by following just the story. And I draw based on somebody not being able to understand English.
I like that a lot.
And so I need to make sure that as I'm doing stuff, facial expressions are and I do mood coloring, facial expressions. That way people don't have to read and understand what they're saying. They're going to get the gist of it and they can make the story up in their mind. So I write completely blank. I draw everything completely blank. And then once it's finished, sit down and open up scene by scene and write the dialogue.
Okay.
And that's why I write it after the fact, because the characters will throw wrenches into anything. They'll change stuff suddenly, and I never know what they're going to. I can't finalize anything until I see what they're saying in the final scenes.
No, I like that though. I like that. I like that. You know, it's something about finding the balance within the chaos. You know,
they are like herding cats. That's my favorite expression. They're all over the place, and I'm just I'm writing down what they're doing.
Let's go ahead. With that being said, though, let's go ahead. We have the opportunity to look at Chapter 1 from Global Comics. So let's go ahead and take a little bit of a deep dive.
I mentioned this before. I'm reworking issue 1 because my thought process starts in the middle. So the beginnings are the hardest for me. And so once I got to 6, I realized number 1 needed a lot more work. So I swapped out the cover. That shows like my more recent style. And then I've got some really dynamite art that's going to come into this issue. But I'll be alerting everybody. There will be new content in it. So it will be worth it to reread it when it's time.
Okay.
Because
and then
I'm adding more stuff to it.
This is available on Global Comics. How many chapters do you have on Global Comics right now?
So I have 1 through 6 is up.
Okay. And then is this where all is this available? Just Global Comics, or do you have other sites?
There is an abridged version at Webtoon. But it's because of their censorship and stuff. It's harder for me, and they have I can't upload as much as Global Comics allows me to. So
really?
I have to like the same issue number 6 had to be divided up to like 4 or 5 up to 6 chapters on Webtoon because it couldn't keep up with me. Whereas on Global Comics, I got all of it in together. It's all together. I didn't have to break anything up.
Wow.
And so I was like, I like that a lot. I didn't have to break it up, and that's why I love Global Comics, because you guys can take whatever I'm throwing at you. Webtoon just can't.
So who are we seeing right here on this cover? Who's who?
Okay, so the guy with the black hair and holding the gun is Raleigh, and he's the Hoosier living in Vegas. And the vampire, of course, is Malachi. The way his name looks, people think it's Malachi, but it's Malachi. He's named after the saint. That's obscure Irish saint. And he is my wild child. I can't control him.
So right here, we start off, and it's very interesting too. There's some dialogue going on at the pub, and there's one last job in Vegas, but we're getting told that Ted's saying that can't go. So who's Ted? You know, what's going on with this Ted guy?
As we reveal more, it is canon in the original stories that Malachi is not only is he a vampire, he's a gangster, but he's kind of like a gangster mall. So he's more like the girlfriend gangster, but he does a lot of theft. He does a lot of so back in the 80s, he was like the big guy that he loved the Krays. So in this world, the Krays, although they went to jail, they continued to actually run their empire, and he was part of that. And there'll be episodes where we talk about like Ronnie Kray and Reggie Kray. Ted took the place of the Krays now that the Krays have passed. So his firm is saying you can't go to Las Vegas, and he's saying I'm going to Las Vegas.
And
I don't care what
he's
Ted
like
says.
he wears these gloves no matter what. Is that
Yes.
something that's kind of like going to be revealed later on?
It will. It's hinted at a little bit actually in this. Why? But we're going to go through. There's in the novels. The novels actually start in like the 1980s, and there's like a 20-year gap.
Mhm.
The 20-year gap that will kind of reveal slowly reveals why he's wearing the gloves.
And the sunglasses too seem so distinctive. Like, what was the influence for that?
Because he believes that if he wears glasses, you wouldn't realize he's a vampire. He thinks that you would think he's just a human. So that he calls it his human disguise. It means you wouldn't think that this guy might be a vampire because
Totally looks like a vampire.
He still wears glasses. Yeah, I know. He still thinks that, oh, you're just gonna think that I'm this completely harmless little man that wears these glasses. He wore glasses as a human, and he just never stopped wearing them. He just decided to tint them.
So we see right here, this guy, he does not have any hope in the Americans. He thinks Mao's going to end up in tears or in a body bag. And we find out that Denny let him to rot in a prison. So Milo did some time too.
He just got out of a stint. He went to jail for 2 years for a gun charge, and he had never been caught, and he'd never gone to jail before, no matter what crimes he committed. And everybody just sort of vanished on him. And true, he's a vampire, and he didn't really actually have to go to jail. He could have just gone away, but he did his time. He just was sad that while he took care of the Krays while they were in jail, nobody came to take care of him. They just left him alone. And Denny is his godfather that got him in to the firm back in the 70s.
I gotcha.
Denny ran a bet shop, and Mal was his apprentice back when he was human.
Let me put this in the link for anyone that's watching. Here's the link to read this. You can get on Global Comics and like and subscribe to Ob to stay up to date for when those chapters start dropping too. Any idea when chapter 7 is going to be dropping?
I'm on a little bit of a hiatus until September. It usually does take me about a month and a half to do the panels and stuff, because I really want to put a lot of quality into it. And I also think about it as being a regular comic book release instead of doing the weekly or 2 weekly thing, which the art suffered. I mean, episode 1 is sort of like shows what happens when I was trying to speed through and do the webtoon style of, okay, I gotta get this out. The art suffers. So I'm decided to do quality over quantity and actually do about every month and a half or so. And
absolutely.
then I'm going to be doing some redraws for the Halloween stuff, which will also show everybody the gritty, sort of weird beginnings of the first draft of what would become American Friends from those early horror comics, where it was a little more horror.
We have Beat Shroot over on YouTube stopping in to say hi. Hey, Beat, welcome to stream. How have you been, man? I appreciate you dropping by. That's one of my friends from Twitch, so always love seeing when they drop by the Keeping It Geekly sphere. We see Denny here reflecting on some younger days with Mao. And then Mao, of course, I love this too, doesn't give two hoots. Spare me the tears, old man. I've never changed. Maybe you have. But yeah, pretty fired up about things. Yeah. And I love this too, so I'll bring you back a big busty showgirl. Like,
yeah. And I always imagine he's saying that really sort of like rather dismissive too. Like, I'll just bring you, I will say Mally is a bit of a bitch. He can get real snappy and whiny. That's kind of why I love him and why I call him my wild child, because I never know what he's going to say.
So this was interesting too. So it's like right in, we're introduced to a new character, the Great Dark Man.
Yeah. And
it just seems, so does this person have any importance, or is this just one of Mao's, escapades for the night?
It's just an escapade for the night. That sort of behaviors like catches up with him. Especially when it gets into Vegas sort of situation, because everybody and Simon has a big discussion about it, that he's got what I call gotta have a man syndrome. He can't be alone, but he's horrible to date. So he just meets these men constantly. And it is a little bit of the grinder sort of hookup culture, only he's of using the app, which I'm sure he probably has the app, he just targets in on these guys.
So what's the new order? Is that like a code word or a phrase?
Oh, New Order is a band.
Okay. Because
Yeah.
I mean, this like
Blue
it seems
Monday.
like it's Mal's like pickup
It's
line.
his code. Yeah.
Like
it is.
Like basically every time that happens, it's like, okay, well, boom. It's like, oh my God, Mal. Like I should have used that line when I was younger. Like
New Order is his favorite band.
I got you.
And
We have a
so
Dan
it's
Price
just- yeah.
over on YouTube stopping in to say what up, y'all. Welcome, Dan. How are you doing tonight? Thank you for stopping by. So yeah, they do terrible things. Mal's all about terrible things getting done to him too.
Yeah, he is definitely really into. He loves being gay. He loves men, loves it, and he's just. But then, when he has them, he doesn't want them.
Mhm.
So it's that little bit. So then we go into, oh great, he picked up this hot guy. Now he's not interested in the guy, but he's still gonna have some fun. But he feels hollow. But he's not going to tell anybody this.
Mm-hmm. And I think you did a good job too, right here, kind of breaking that exposition down, like how it was just like a means to an end for him.
Right.
I thought that was a pretty deep take too. Like, what kind of drove you to? Because I mean, it feels like you're really touching upon some really like deeper aspects of that.
Yeah, it's I meet a lot of, again, the meeting people. I used to be a night editor for 7 years, and meeting people who we just knew they were just hookups, and then in the darkness, and they're
walk
sitting on
of
the couch, and the walk of shame, and they want more. They would sit and tell me their stories all night long. They want more, but they don't think that they can have it or they deserve it, and it's that sort of thing.
I love this too. It felt like a fourth wall break too.
Yeah. So this introduces the sibling Simon, who's been like a mother and a sort of caretaker of Mally. There's 3 brothers. Eventually we'll see the other brother, but it won't be for a while because he moved off to Australia, so I gotta bring him back. But that's why Mally likes to prod and poke at Simon, but in the end he loves his sibling. He loves his sibling very much, and but he likes to snip at him and fight. And they're both well, I guess now that Simon's non-binary, I think their sexuality is a little more fluid than they used to be. But previously, in a previous life, they would have been a gay man.
I gotcha.
Yeah. Simon's still teaching me a lot of things I have to remember. But yeah. So it's Simon giving sort of the wisdom of you're worth more than picking up these guys all the time. And I want you to see your value, because they finally see the value. They had a rough time in life, but
Mal does not. Mal considers value and sex 2 different things.
Yeah.
And I think that could be really emphasized a lot in the hookup culture too. The way people view it and look at it.
Yeah.
And we kind of like start to drift down, and right here we see Simon wants him to take the gloves off.
Yeah.
And it's not happening. And like right here, that's kind of I wanted to ask that question because it seemed like there's such a big emphasis on it.
Yeah. Because really the gloves act as he doesn't want to touch things, and it's not like a germaphobe thing. He just doesn't want to feel the sensation of things. So those gloves, it's not the same pair of gloves he wears all the time. I'm going to show the fact that he wears new gloves all the time, but the gloves are stopping him from having to feel things. Just like the sex is stopping him from feeling things. And the great dark man is the writer Quentin Crisp talked about the search of the great dark man, which was a very powerful man, the man that sort of takes over your life, sort of.
Yeah.
So the great dark man could be anyone, and that's why he's searching. He's like Quentin, he was searching for that.
So we see right here that Simon has a family.
Yes.
So are like the family vampires as well?
So the children that's Penelope and Jeremy, and Simon went through a bit of because these types of vampires can have children, and when Tommy became a vampire, they got a little baby crazy and decided with a surrogate to have children. And so they're a single parent with these two little kids, little vampire children, which has been a learning curve because they never had vampire children before.
Do vampires age?
So in this world, they do if they don't take care of themselves. And in this case, Simon was actually a late in life vampire, being in their 50s. And the old woman there is actually their sister, who's in her 70s. And it's a little bit of a spoiler, but she actually will become a vampire as well. Because they're like, hey, it's never too late. And it's sort of a little bit of a
is this modeled off of your family? Two
No.
brothers and a sister?
I guess so. Except, we would the little sister. Kind of a little bit. I work in threes for some reason. I'm really obsessed with threes. So you'll always find that sort of dynamic in there. There's always like threes.
Yeah, you got the two little kids right here in the teddy bear.
And I believe there probably is going to be a third little kid eventually. I don't think Simon's done. But yeah.
So we go down and
love him so much.
We go down and we are introduced to yet again another escapade.
Yeah.
Mal is just at it on a roll. And like I said, the New Order, just the surefire pickup line. I wish I would have known that when I was younger. So we scroll down, and it's been a rough 2 weeks, and
now we're in Vegas. Yep.
So what are we seeing here?
So what I originally had to hide on Webtoon was the fact that Raleigh is actually a sex worker, and so is his girlfriend. That is going to be changed a little bit, so we're going to see that's what he does. But he specializes in women at this point, especially older women, because he wants to make them feel loved and comfortable, and so that's actually going to be a part of the redraw. He's just a really loving guy. He wants everyone that he comes in contact to feel loved. And he doesn't understand why now his girlfriend doesn't love him anymore. She's icing him out, and she can be really mean. And I didn't want to make it that Jenny is mean because she's a woman and he's actually a bisexual. We're gonna find out sort of more and more. She kind of hints on it a little bit about her background, and how her family was, and she can't help. She's just like kind of one of those girls that you find out that they just didn't have a good life, and it made them a little mean. And sometimes they stay mean. But while she is a villain, I don't want people to think that she's a villain only because she's a woman. It's just that she's just not a nice person.
God, she is a villain though. Holy crap! So right here she's calling him a crybaby. Did your mom die or something? Like, oh my God, like, and right away, he's like, I hate when you say that stuff about my mom, and we see the acknowledgement that Jenny loves to hurt him, and has been hurting him for years, and his mom's been battling cancer, so like her coming at him like that's really rough. And so we get the opportunity, Jenny leaves her phone, and he gets the chance to kind of go through it.
This is the one part that I kind of like. When I originally released it, I told people, he shouldn't have looked at her phone. It's the one part where I kind of a little bit disagree that Raleigh looked at her phone, but he did it anyway and he wasn't going to listen to me. So he kind of gets knocked with the truth of what she really thinks about him, because she's done with him. And it's about two people who know that they need to move on, and they're not moving forward with the relationship, so they're just sort of like it's ending, but they don't know how to officially say goodbye, other than they break up and come back, and this is sort of the official goodbye a little bit, but it's still really hard for them because they were childhood sweethearts.
Give me 1 second. Let me refresh this. Sometimes when it's stuck on an endless circle like that, there we go. And then he comes back, or she comes back from her jog, and why are you sitting there crying, crybaby? And like basically he just lets her know, like, I your burner phone was on the bed, I caught you, you're cheating out in the open, and they call it off right here, but he kind of is still like wanting to hold on. I feel like
that because like we'll have flashbacks. I love to do flashbacks, so we'll have flashbacks of who she was back when they first met, when he was 16 and she was probably getting close to 16. They met in high school, He's still in his mind remembers that girl that he met back then, and so it's really hard for them to sort of break up.
Mm-hmm.
Even though, like, because they moved to Vegas together, they've been together, and it's hard for him to say goodbye. And he's just so nice. He's such a sweetheart that he just hates to hurt, but he also hates to hurt people.
Yeah, but she has no problem hurting him. It looks like.
Right.
And I'm curious. You said you made an emphasis to put like colors and emotions. What is the yellow supposed to represent?
Envy, and I mean, he caught her cheating, and he's not the man in her world anymore.
I love that though.
And the fire, they're mad, they're angry, orange fire, red, and then he's like, oh, what? You actually hit me, Yeah. Because he's not from a family that ever yelled and we'll kind of cover like what his family life was like.
I love how the black heart too, like it makes her look vile and dark, you know what I mean?
And the darkness, yeah. Because she's just like she's one of my villains.
Yeah.
And she's gonna start playing her part a little more right now. Things are a little quiet, but I always hope she'll be back.
And saying some more venomous stuff. Big and muscular, but you're just a whiny man child. Like, holy crap. She's definitely making sure she's leaving a mark on him before she shuts that door. This was such a rough breakup. It was, why put him through so much pain before, he left?
I think it's because it's sort of like it really is based on people that I've watched and I've seen do these terrible, my dad was very sensitive. So there's a little bit of my dad in there with that sensitivity, and I just wanted it to be like, guys, this happens and it's okay. Like the crybaby part was actually from my childhood, being called a crybaby all the time. And it was used against me. And so that's a little bit of me too in there with the, if somebody really wants to like poke at me, if they call me crybaby, that's a pretty big poke. But, I had to make it just a little brutal because she just can be so mean. Yeah. And I wanted something to be like, okay, for real this time, he definitely is going to get out. Like, even if we find that out too, because he gets a phone call to be around the Queen of Sheba at 10 p.m. It's his lucky day. The king's offering him a job. So who's the king? So King Midas. We meet him more in episode 2. He's the king of Vegas. He is the head of the territory. He is the guy that, he controls everything. But at the same time, he gives. I like that he was in so much power, but he also put his people first. He basically, and his sister Edie talks more about that. That they employ the most people of color. They make sure people have jobs. In the 60s, when the pools got closed because, people of color wanted to go swimming, they built pools. So I wanted to have this sort of alternative Las Vegas where it's not like it's people of color running it, because they were put, so many entertainers went through there that, they were so dismissed there. And I was like, I want this Vegas is going to be, and the Queen of Sheba was that's like out of the Bible. She was I believe Sheba was Ethiopia, so that was sort of a little historic point. Like, you have Caesar's Palace where you're going to have the Queen of Sheba casino and hotel. I just felt the representation, and I also wanted to represent Black vampires. That because that's king is a vampire. It's just he's a vampire, and so a lot of people don't realize it at first, because they think of vampires as just being like white people. And I really wanted to show that there are Black vampires out there, and it's just that was my vision of Vegas. is going to be run by this King Midas.
No, I love
and we'll learn more of his backstory and his sister and everything.
And that is so awesome. So here is chapter 1 of American Prince in its entirety. I put the link in the chat again. Let me do that one more time. You can read all 6 chapters. And you know, Ob's on a little bit of a hiatus, but we'll be swinging back. Stuff. Yeah, we'll be working and swinging in full force here shortly. So let's go ahead and get back to our main screen and begin wrapping things up.
Sure. And I will say that number 6 actually is like the best that I've done. The art is amazing. The story is amazing. It's kind of like where everything's just sort of like clicked, and I was like, I'm on fire now. Yeah.
Let's go. So
that's why I don't mind that number 6 has had the most reads, because it's really good. Yeah.
So with that being said, what's next for you? Are you working on anything outside of American Prince, or is it all just American Prince for you?
It really is American Prince related. Like I said, I'll be reworking and bringing to fans those original horror stories with the guys in it, from the Halloween anthologies that we did in the previous few years. And I know that, of course, I'm redrawing episode 1, getting that back up. I'm just really in love with American Prince. And I did have another comic. It was called Red to Red, and it was a time travel story, but American Prince just sort of like,
it's not hitting the beat for you right now, huh?
Yeah, they were just like, we need this, and so I'm like, all right, let's go. And that's my love, and that's where I'm gonna keep on pushing it.
That is so awesome. That is so awesome. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you coming on here and breaking things down. This was such an awesome conversation. Before we end things completely, though, I always love asking this one question in particular, because as much as this is a podcast meant to showcase you and your book, it is also a nice little learning tool for new creators out there. For anyone that's watching for the first time, or maybe they're watching for their 50th time, but they're still struggling on coming out with a book or a story that they've been having just brewing in the back of their head. What type of advice would you give them to help them kind of break through that barrier to get started?
I just basically just ran. I just started by, again, I know it sounds weird, I start in the middle and then work my way to the beginning. And basically just whatever your brain sees, just put it down, and just constantly practice. You will get better. Use the tools. I use Clip Studio, and that was a game changer. I use all the assets that I can. And take your time. I know that there's this big sort of push to get stuff out every 2 weeks. It's okay to take your time. And because the art, you want your art to just really be there. And so it's okay to take your time. Okay to just practice, and love what you're doing. Definitely don't try to go for commercialism, because that's why I ended up dumping my first comic, because it was a commercial grab. But people have long pointed out, whenever I did something, they could feel if it was commercial, my heart wasn't in it, but they feel when my heart's in it. And my most successful projects have that.
No, that is awesome. I appreciate that. Thank you so much for such an awesome piece of advice. Oh, this has been such an awesome chat. Real quick, what social media platforms can everyone find you on?
Twitter, of course. Actually, Facebook, for people who like Facebook. You can find me under Aubrey Diamant. We Are Diamant is my Twitter. And of course, I'm big in the Discord over at Global Comics. And I actually do a lot of Reddit, and I'm trying to get people to not be so scared of Reddit. I only had one troublemaker, and I was ready to rumble with them, and they never came back to fight me. So,
yeah, let's go. Put the gloves on.
Exactly. Use Reddit. It is a great tool. Don't be afraid to use it. But I'm always around. I'm somewhere, always around.
That is so awesome. Well, everyone, you heard it here. Be sure to check out Ob on all those platforms to stay up to date with what he's doing next. Everyone watching, this has been such an awesome podcast. I loved breaking down American Prince and learning everything in between. Thank you so much for coming on, and it was nice to finally get face to face. I love all the support that you've been showing me lately, and I can't wait to see where you're going next. Everyone who's watching, have a fantastic Monday, but most importantly, guys, keep it geekly.
Yeah. Bye.